Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Pablo. Today is April 28th. I'm feeling rather low today because I'm stuck with an issue. I've been looking at it for so many hours and I just can't figure it out. So frustrating. But I think it's related to this video I wanted to make today. I was listening last week a podcast of my very good friend called Imran Sajid. He works at SAP. He's a director for payroll. And he's got a podcast called Rethinking HR and Payroll for the Modern Workforce. And long story short, in the latest episode, he was talking about why it was about how if you have Employee Central, lots of the talent modules benefit. Okay, which I tend to agree with 100%. But what I wanted to talk to you today, it's because I was reflecting on that and I realized probably 80% of my work in the past so much time, because I've been literally just playing that role, right? Working as a cross-module subject matter expert, whatever you want to call it. Because of realizing the market, there are not very many people who effectively can do that, right? Know about these modules or the cross module. I mean, obviously, the majority of the people, I would argue, know that you can connect them. First of all, that there's a reasoning behind it. And then some of the standard config, right, which is super easy to connect certain modules, right? So for example, opening a job requisition out of a position, is that nothing really revolutionary out of it, right? So, you start with kind of the basic cross-module integrations, but to be honest, to really be effective, right? And I'm in a mini campaign trying to argue this, it's not just about the technology, it's about processes and the functional side of it, right? The sort of like the HR consulting. For example, I think the quality comes not just knowing that you can start a job requisition from a position and then that the information feeds over to the requisition. I think where the value is okay, we know that we can do that. I know how to set it up. But let's actually talk about the functional side. Where do we put the approvals? Because if you're already approving a position, information is flowing onto the requisition. Do you need to send it for approval again? If the answer is yes, who approves it? For all of the positions? What about interns? What about factory workers that you're going to be recruiting them fairly consistently? What happens if you terminate someone and your process forces you to create a new position, are you going to be creating a position for every intern that leaves, right? The information you're sending from a position to a job requisition might be the org information, but what if you need to approve comp, right? Or a bonus, right? Is that being stored in the position? Are you fitting it onto the requisition or not? What if then in the requisition you change something so once you hire the person, it's not matching the position? How do you handle that, right? That is really where the money is, okay? Knowing how to set up a position from, the integration from a position to a requisition, that's easy, right? I think there are some obvious ones, right? So the relationship between, we talked about position to requisition or recruiting to onboarding back to Employee Central. That's another one that it's a pet peeve of mine, managed pending hires. I've already set it up for 2 companies, completely automated. 100%, nobody touches managed pending hires. Because the information either comes from the onboarding or just a bunch of business rules, right, or relationships in Employee Central. And then clicking the button, you just put an RPA-based bot and it does the job for you. No reason to have anybody going in. Again, are you able to get there? That's really where this resource I'm talking about, cross-module integration, is to understand that, right? Do you know that the screen exists and that data comes from onboarding? Of course, can you set that up? Can you map some fields? Of course, but it's really getting to that optimal point, which is completely populating all data. Even if you have to have someone clicking 4 times, you have that. And then performance to comp, succession and employee central through the position and so many, right? These probably a dozen cross-module integration points there. The use of intelligence services comes very handy, right? So event-driven. So if something happens here, triggers something else that happens here, and it's just a different type of integration, I would argue. And then some of there are some that are not that obvious, right? That I recently, I guess I'm involved in a project right now about it, which is, for example, leave of absence, okay? First of all, to set up leave of absence, in addition to know what that is, I would argue that falls under the employee central scope. But what about learning, right? If someone goes on maternity leave and they have some required learning to take, how do you solve for that, right? Because you probably don't want to, either the manager or the person itself, receiving a bunch of notifications or notch that they haven't completed it because they're in leave of absence. What about compensation, right? If someone is on military leave, are they eligible for merit increase? Probably, the answer is probably yes, right? But still, or if someone is on like an educational leave, 2 years, right, is still being paid an allowance, which I came across a case like that. Are they eligible for merit increase? Probably not, right? So you need to set up your eligibility rules in compensation to take that into consideration, or set it up at the employee central level. So then when it feeds onto compensation, those get filtered out. And anyway, so many examples, right? And in my opinion, that's the beauty of success factors, or that's what really makes sense or start getting exciting. Once you have all these modules and all this data, right, talking to each other. But unfortunately, I would argue, to be honest, I would actually say 100% of my clients ever, okay, which is a ton of them, they have gaps, right? Just because you don't know what you don't know. And it's not just about knowing the technology and that you can get it done, but in my opinion, it's really more about the functional side, right? Are your consultants able to have that conversation to say, look, first of all, do you know that there's an integration for this? Number 2, I mean, it's assumed that you know how to set it up, but 3, let's talk about it because it could be beneficial, right? Like the leave of absence, I'm sure it gets handled in a way, right? Like in the comp example, I'm sure that your comp admin's eventually gonna, as they're auditing the data, they're going to remove them manually. But could you automate all that, right? And also, what about your large organizations, right? Or the complex ones? You almost have to automate things, otherwise, you're if you depend on humans or a team, you're just not going to get it done. Same with managed pending hires, right? If you could save all that time of someone going in and filling information and just having all that automated, and maybe receive an email if there's some type of error or exception, I think that's a game changer, right? On the position side, right? If someone, this is another one that I never see, right, people using, but if you know someone is going to leave, right, so they resign, there's a termination event already recorded in the system. But if you want to create a requisition of the position that same day, the standard is that it might not let you because you already have an incumbent in the position. But it doesn't make sense because you want to start backfilling that position sooner, right? Or what if your relationship with that position is that one-on-one, so you don't allow to have 2 persons in the same position, assuming they're all full-time. But if someone is leaving, so you need to backfill that. Can you put some sort of condition that allows you to have two people in the position for a particular amount of time? As a mechanism to fulfill that position? Yeah, you can. So again, these are some business scenarios that you need to be prepared to talk about if you're calling yourself like a solution architect or so. But to be honest, my experience with these solution architects has been nothing short of terrible, just because I think a lot of people know the technical side, how to set things up, and they're aware of cross-module integrations, but in some of them, it's not a standard way to do it, and you just have to be creative, right? And just know the functional side, the process, like this complex example I was just giving you, and the leave of absences. So anyways, okay, yeah, I guess lastly I'll say I have a lot of bandwidth. So if you need help with HRIS or SuccessFactors, let me know, because I'm looking for work right now. And I'm cheap, $99 an hour. I don't think you're ever gonna find any other consultant that charges you that. And I think, humbly speaking, I think I bring a lot to the table. Lots of experience, lots of lessons learned, and most of the time a really good attitude among many things. So I'll see you next time.